You have to be patient with your students, and if you're above the level of teacher, if you're an administrator, if you work for the district, you also have to be patient with teachers. It is a long, hard process to get good at this job. And so that's what our next group is going to be presenting on. How can we effectively develop new young teachers, and what do we currently have in place, and how is that benefiting us as a district? So without further ado, Patty Davidson, Alice Regneri, and Deneen Robie. Thank you.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you. So I am Alice Regneri, and what I'm going to do is start off by explaining why induction programs are necessary and look at how Nashua's induction program is set up. Then we're going to have Patty, who's going to talk about the data that we collected in and out of the district and see how Nashua compares to the surrounding communities. And then Deneen is going to talk about retention rates and recommendations and conclusions that we've gotten from our research. So one of the first things we looked at was how other industries train their employees. We wanted to see what kind of effect this had on employees and on productivity. So all companies train their new employees. They have some kind of program to train them. We looked at companies like Apple, Pixar, HP, and GE, and they all have comprehensive training programs. So based on the data that we collected from this, it's clear that good training practices create long-lasting benefits in areas like productivity and cost saving. So if businesses put this time and effort into training their employees, why shouldn't education do the same? Numbers. There are huge numbers of new teachers entering the field in this country every year. And while new teachers bring fresh ideas and unique perspectives to the classroom, the better trained and supported educators are more knowledgeable, or the more knowledgeable he or she becomes in regards to best education practices and relationship building with coworkers, peers, parents. School districts really should provide training for these new employees, just like industry, just like companies do. So not only are large numbers of teachers entering the field every year, but unfortunately within the first 4 years of teaching, about 40 to 50% of teachers are leaving education. There are many reasons for this, not the least of which includes increasing demands on teachers like high stakes testing, large class sizes, and the lack of necessary resources. Teacher turnover costs the district money additionally through advertising, interviewing, human resources expenses, time spent developing certification plans. One study that we examined said that the cost of a teacher leaving ranged from $5,000 to $15,000 per teacher. In a large school district like Chicago, the average cost was about $18,000 per teacher. And the total in a year in Chicago was that the district spent about $86 million a year per teacher leaving. And this is why, a huge reason why we need to have an induction program that helps teachers feel grounded and feel connected. So there's a real problem facing America's teaching profession, and that is retention here, trying to keep teachers in the field and feeling supportive. So again, industries train new employees. There's a large number of new teachers entering the field every year, large number leaving the profession every year as well. So as the AFT president, Randy Weingarten, explains, retention is a very real problem. Good teachers are leaving the field every year. They're feeling overwhelmed and under-supported. So the question we asked was, what can be done about this? Probably one of the most important statistics that we found in our research was this. New teachers who are part of an effective induction program produce greater student gains than those who are not part of such a program. The New Teachers Center found gains as great as 8% in math and about 4% in reading in one Colorado study. So it's clear that new induction programs are critical. So what do they look like? There's some key components to having an effective induction program. Some of these include at least 2 years of continued support, careful selection, training, and compensation for the mentors, and specialized professional development opportunities like observations and peer collaboration. It's also interesting to note here that the research supports giving new teachers the best possible working conditions in regards to class size, schedule, room assignment, which unfortunately is not the case in many districts, including Nashua. So this is what Nashua's induction program looks like. It's a comprehensive program that includes training prior to the start of the school year, access to peer coaches, building mentors, and cohort opportunities. It's really important to understand the concept of a cohort. It's very different from just a scheduled monthly meeting. For one thing, cohorts are run by our wonderful peer coaches rather than our wonderful administrators, which makes it a safe place for new teachers to take risks. Plus, the cohorts are developed organically. So the peer coaches work very hard to provide readings or videos that serve as a launch pad for meaningful discussions. And that allows the participants to kind of grow in these discussions with one another. So you'll see from our research when we get to that, that Nashua actually has a very unique format for the new teacher professional development. And now, Patty is going to take you through the data that was collected in and out of Nashua and see how our induction program compares to that in surrounding communities.
Okay, so first, in the district, we used the data that the peer coaches had already collected from the new teachers. And the feedback was very positive overall, that the new teachers immediately felt very supported. There are a lot of comments about valuing the opportunity to be able to network and discuss together. You can read some of the comments highlighted, that they highlight the pro of the new teacher orientation in Nashua, and the collaborative piece really seems to be a strength. Many of the other districts, their orientation spends a lot of time on HR, POPs kind of things, and we definitely do that in Nashua, because you have to, but there's also components in the orientation about teaching and learning. So the Nashua teachers felt very excited about the upcoming school year. We also used data collected from the peer coaches, by the peer coaches from the new teachers about the whole program as well. And this feedback shows that the new teachers really value their relationship with the peer coaches as safe and non-evaluative. The peer coaches view themselves as a safe harbor for these beginning educators. And here are some of the comments from the new teachers on the peer coaches. And you can see that the new teachers really found the peer coaches to be a very valuable resource in the Nashua School District. We also included some comments from veteran teachers who gave feedback on their experiences with the peer coaches, with the way that the professional development is in Nashua now, the book groups that the peer coaches offer, and the cohorts that they run, and the classroom visitations that they provide have become even more important to all of the teachers in the district. So that was what the new teachers were reporting about the induction program. And then we also collected some data from the mentors. So we used a survey that the peer coaches had developed, and then I administered it. Not all of the mentors responded, but the feedback that we did receive was very positive. Some of the issues that came up were finding time to meet with their mentees, and also just a willingness of the mentees to ask for help or to accept help. A couple of suggestions that came up from the mentors were to have more training, and also to have some of those cohorts attended by both the mentors and the mentees. You'll see later on that some of the other districts that we surveyed already have these items in place. Nashua used to have a day of training for mentors, but it faded out as most of the mentors were not selected before the start of the school year. Some of the comments from the mentors. I am a mentor. This is my second year being a mentor, and I love it. And I learned doing this research that there's a lot that I should be doing to help my mentees, and I'll use time and training as my excuse, but know that I'm going to do better in the future. You can see from the comments that the mentors feel that it's a huge honor to be a mentor and also a really big responsibility. And then we moved on to administrators. So Alice sent out a survey to a small group of administrators to collect their thoughts on the induction process, but we only had one administrator response. We know this is because the administrators are so busy. The one administrator that did respond was not really sure what the induction program entailed. And our literature review found that strong support from administration is really a key component of effective induction programs. So that was our data for the in-district data collection. Some concerns that we had, you saw, it was very qualitative. We love all the comments and the kind of anecdotal stuff, but really it would have been good to have some numbers to show you. Also, we would like to have more responses from mentors and definitely from the administrators. So then we looked to see what are other people doing? What are other districts doing? So we looked around and we separated them into two categories, cities and the surrounding towns. And we contacted the different districts by email and phone. And we asked them about their induction program. What do you do for orientation? And what do you offer for new teacher professional development? So here's the data about the New Hampshire cities. And you can notice that Nashua has the most days of orientation, and they're the only ones that have a cohort. And remember from what Alice was saying, that's different from like a monthly meeting where September is about, open house and parent meetings, and it's run by someone that does not evaluate them. This next slide here is about the surrounding communities. So we found it was interesting that the 3 days of orientation in Hollis Brookline are with the mentors. And we noticed that there's some changes coming up, like Amherst is going to add a day with mentors this coming year, and that Hollis Brookline is going to start having monthly meetings. Then we really wanted to know more about the mentor piece, because that really seemed like a key component of effective induction programs. So in particular, we wanted to know how the mentors are selected, if and how the mentors are trained, and if and how much the mentors are paid. So we thought it was interesting that Manchester ended their formal mentor program 3 years ago. And the assistant superintendent of Salem responded that they should be training their mentors. And Nashua used to pay their mentors $1,000 a year. Now it's $700. And Nashua also, as I said, used to have training with the mentors, but because they weren't picked until later on, that sort of was discontinued. So then in the surrounding communities, they all have a formal mentor program except Hudson. And remember that for later when you see the retention data. All the districts that reported that their mentors are selected by administration, like ours are. Timberlane provides 3 days of training, mentor training. Merrimack does 2 days with mentors and mentees, and Milford's doing 1 day of training. Notice that Merrimack pays on average $1,600 a year for mentors, and Hollis Brookline is going to start paying $500 per year next year. And we thought it was interesting that Timberlane's mentor payment schedule depended on the experience of the mentee, like more money for a first year. We also found out that the mentor responsibilities at Timberlane include observing the mentee 2 to 3 times a year. So then we just included the payment schedule for the Timberlane mentors because we found that that was interesting. It depends on the level of experience that the mentees have. So now Deneen is going to talk to you about retention rates and what we think it all means.
So we're going to talk a little bit about some quantitative data. So we wanted to use retention rates as a way to say, you know, are induction programs working? Good induction programs, higher retention rates, right? Retaining teachers to not leave the district. So this is a graph of the percentage of new teacher retention rates in Nashua from 2003 until last year. And what is interesting, what we want to take a look at, what's interesting to see is what the retention rates before the one-year cohort was required, and then after. Before 2005, when the one-year cohort was required, the retention rate was 50%. Then after that, but before the 3-year cohort was required, the retention rate had gone up to 82%, and last year it was 93%. So good job. So we then wanted to look at, like the New Hampshire cities and the surrounding communities for their retention rates. And we thought, okay, no problem. It's like, you know, what's your percentage of free and reduced lunch? What's your salary schedule? We can get the information, no problem. But it really was a problem. It wasn't that easy to get. People just didn't have the data. And when they did, it was more kind of like a feeling, more qualitative, right? And so what's interesting to look here is that Manchester, of course, the most like city in New Hampshire to us, did not have the data. And Salem's data, they only had 24 new teachers where we had 100. So then when we go to surrounding communities, we remember Hudson, right? That was, we recall, they don't have a mentor program. And when we asked them, they really did not want to be quoted because they recognized it was a problem. And the assistant superintendent who gave us the numbers for Hollis Brookline said it was embarrassing, and she was talking about their 2013 through 2015 numbers when she referred to it. So as we did all of our research and we tried to get that retention data, it became pretty obvious to us that there was a lot more at play here, right? It was obvious that there were other factors that factored into teachers staying. However, it is clear that in all of the research that today's beginning educator is looking for a supportive workplace. And having the supportive induction program like Nashua makes these other factors that are present, you know, it gives them less reason to leave if you have that good induction program, okay? So what does it all mean moving forward? So as we said, we have a lot to celebrate here in Nashua. And during our research, Barry Sweeney kept coming up with his induction model. And we feel like when we look at Nashua's induction program, it kind of falls at the instructional practice model, kind of right there in the middle, with some great practices already in place, a great foundation. But it would only take like a few changes, a few additions to move us down to actually the top model, which is the school transformational model. And that would be a real growth mindset for all teachers. That's really where we want to be. So even though our retention data was inconclusive to determine whether or not induction programs were effective, through all of the research we did, and you'll see in our works cited, we really tried to do a lot to make sure we could make some great recommendations. We're still able to make some recommendations for our program. And first and foremost is we need more peer coaches. All of the data shows that you should have one peer coach for 12 to 17 mentees. And right now, our peer coaches are 1 to 50 because we have about 100 new teachers. So that's our first recommendation. Our second recommendation is the mentor selection program. Our peer coaches work so closely with the mentors that it really would be great if they could make the selection of the mentors themselves. At the very least, be part of that process. And really, it's so key that they're able to do that before the upcoming school year. Picking them up. Prior to the end of the school, because then they'll be in place for when they do that orientation in those critical first weeks of school, they'll already be in place. So that's our second recommendation. And as we saw in our research, the mentors are really an important part of the induction process. And so they should reflect the mission of the induction program. Those that are chosen should reflect that. And they really need to have the resources. They need to be given the resources they need to fulfill the responsibilities to the mentees. So they need to be able to be trained and to be let out to observe and then have the mentees able to observe them. They need to be given that time. And of course, if their responsibilities are increased, we really need to look at the compensation also and make sure that goes along with what their responsibilities are. And really, for an induction program to be most successful, it's important that all leaders meet to discuss the support for the new teachers. The peer coaches meet with the mentors, they meet with the mentees, they all meet together. They should all meet together more, but the administrators, they meet with new teachers, they support new teachers, and they evaluate new teachers. So really, it would be great for both peer coaches and administration, along with mentors, to work together to make the induction program as effective as possible. So we were reminded during our research, it made me, as a curriculum liaison, it reminded me of how, what great resources we do have. We have peer coaches, mentors, instructional coaches, curriculum liaisons. It would be so helpful if once again we were able to work together to offer support to the new teachers and the veteran teachers. This would promote us to that, Barry Sweeney, that next level of induction programs where we would have an even more comprehensive induction program. Continuous learning for all educators. And all of us here want our community to be somewhere where people want to send their children to school, right? And one way to do that is to create a school system that's second to none. It starts with staffing our schools with teachers that feel invested in this community. And that requires that they are supported by this community. An equality induction program is a good foundation for that support. So thank you. And the next two slides are our interviews, and the next slide is our list of research. We wanted to make sure that we collected as much information as possible in order to come up with true recommendations. And there are so many people to thank, but Diane and Paula, you first and foremost, thank you for your vision and realizing that growth comes from being able to reflect on what we do. You offer that to so many teachers. Thank you. And also, yes. Also, thank you, all of you, for coming. Our hope is that together we can continue to offer the best education possible. So thank you. Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, two things. I was curious, why does it cost so much to retrain, to hire a new teacher? I know some of the costs, but did you see any information for that? Why the teacher turnover costs were so much?
Just the HR, the advertising,
Yeah.
and the HR cost and the training cost and
And Diane had been telling us about the hours that go into developing the certification
Certification
plans.
plans.
You know, they're doing all.
which are included
certification.
in our peer coach costs, but other districts have people that I think do that, and that costs, that's
Yeah, and
it's a huge amount of hours and time.
the second thing is, you know, in about 8 years ago, or 7 years ago, I was transferred to Nashua North, and you know, I thought I was a pretty good teacher at that point. I've been teaching for about 8 years, and I got a really, really tough schedule my first semester and my first month was really, really hard. And I actually spoke to Don Prevenger, who was a 30-year veteran that had a similar issue recently, and he goes, have Diane come in your room. I go, it's just, you know, she's great, and just do it. He goes, I did it, and I'm a 30-year veteran. And I had Diane come in my room and observe, and she was really, you know, she really helped me out. And I mean, I was considering at that point resigning, so thank you so much. You really were, you saved me, so thank you.
So,
Like Patty, I'm a mentor. This is my second year, and I agree, it's a privilege to do it. I think one of the benefits that you didn't talk about was the benefit to the mentors, because I know that I have grown as a person and as an educator through my relationships with my mentees, which I'm working with 2 of them today, and through, you know, my colleagues in the building. I know a lot of other people in a deeper, more meaningful way as resources and just as people that I'm working with, because I'm involved in this program. So I'm so appreciative of it. Thank you.
That's a great point, Sue, thank you. And also the relationship that we've developed with the other mentors
Yes.
when we meet. That is a great network.
and it really speaks to that transformational model where it's like continuous learning. The veteran teachers, they're, you know, you're reflecting also, so you're continuing to learn, which is what we do in PLCs, and it really needs to be a whole, you know, big vision, so, yeah.
And I look forward to the after-school mentor cohorts, and there aren't many meetings after school that I actually look forward to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.